How am you folks, and welcome back to another episode of A Word from Experience. Today we sat down with Ash James, the Director of Practice and Development of the CSP, Chartered Society of Physiotherapy in London, where we spoke about all things AI, the future of physiotherapy as a profession, and where we are heading, and how we can look for a brighter future. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Check out the CSP channel and their videos. Check out Ash James's accounts and his content, and we will see you on the next one. Ta-ra a bit, folks. Thank you, Ash, for your time today. We're at the CSP offices. We've travelled all the way down to London to interview Ash James, one of the directors of the CSP. So thank you so much for your time.
No, absolute pleasure.
And I've met Ash a couple of times. One at a networking event in Birmingham where we had a bit of a chat on when you're at the physiotherapy conference in Tokyo about general practice, and we'll come on to that shortly. And then also at the NHS Trust I worked at Evesham, where we were showcasing the exercise class that the team do there. And then it was almost from that perspective of, because you're quite a forward-thinking person and physio in that sort of world, about trying to capture a bit more information about physiotherapy as a whole, what you do, what the CSP does, and try and make it relatively entertaining and informative at the same time. So thank you for having us in your fancy offices.
No,
and as you mentioned, and obviously you're quite popular on LinkedIn and posting a lot, and you mentioned that you previously worked in sports physiotherapy, occupational health, education, and then obviously from that clinical aspect, you then moved more into a management leadership type role and innovation. What challenges did you face? Because I guess from our physio perspective, we all train to do clinical, and leadership is just sort of, it's just pushed to the side. But then going from your clinical experience into leadership, how did you find that transition, and what challenges did you face?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that the biggest challenge that I found actually in that was from myself. You get into clinical practice or physiotherapy because you want to help patients. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you're in a leadership position, you're not patient facing anymore. So there's more of an internal kind of struggle there to think, am I using my skills in the best way? But I suppose the way that I would justify that to myself and many leaders, and it's true, so it's not a kind of false justification, it's that once you're in a leadership position, you're in a position where you can use your influence to change the care for lots of patients. And I think that's the drive, that's the shift that you make initially, is understanding that it's not about that individual patient, but what can I do for more people, and using your knowledge experience to be able to do that. There's lots of practical things that you need to do, I think, to transition, and there's new skills that you'll pick up, certainly from my perspective around finance and governance and risk management and all of those things that come along with being in a leadership role, particularly in an executive role like I've got here at the CSP. But I think we forget that as a clinician, we are leaders in lots of ways. As soon as you're with a patient, you are in a leadership position with that patient. You're imparting and helping them form decisions. You're imparting advice. You are using your emotional intelligence to understand how that person operates and how you can get the best out of that person. So all of the things like team development and building a team, you have those skills. You develop those skills as a clinician. And the biggest for me, the biggest trait I think that makes a good leader, or certainly good leaders I've worked with, is authenticity. So being able to be yourself and continue to be who you are in a leadership position is really important. So you shouldn't almost lose that. As much as you do make a transition from clinical to leadership when you're at that stage in your career, you shouldn't lose who you are in that. So being authentic will get you further. And I've met lots of leaders that you kind of come up against, and it feels corporate. It feels kind of, you hear all the jargon and the leadership speak, and that's not for me. And I think it's really important that you retain who you are and bring yourself to the role. So I think there's lots that practical things that you need to learn. There are new skills, but there's also so much that you pick up from being a clinician that's transferable. So it's a bit of a balance of both, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it's, as you said, with the authenticity side of things, making people aware that actually who they are, why they wanted to get into physio, that passion and purpose can go with you through all levels.
Absolutely, your values probably don't really change. You know, you get into patient care or being a clinician because you care about people. You know, you want to make people better, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about making a service better, then maybe a community better, then maybe a region better. So I think your values stay the same, just the scale at which you're trying to deliver that might change. But I don't think people's values change an awful lot.
Yeah, in terms of the continuity of who they are and what they're trying to achieve. Just building on that in terms of, do you think that, I know from a university perspective, sometimes the leadership can almost seem too far afield, it might be X amount of years away, but you made a poignant point there of, actually, we're all leaders from the moment the patient comes in. How do you think as a profession, whether it's physiotherapists, CSP members and all of us together, how can we sort of empower that actually we can be leaders from day one a bit more, do you think?
Well, I think people are leaders from day one. Leadership isn't a position. Being a leader or leadership is a set of behaviors, it's a set of values, it's how you approach a problem. So you can be a leader from day one, and many people are. I suppose that the key thing for students to understand is uncoupling the thought of being a leader from a position. That's the biggest thing you can do, because I think people see leaders as directors or chief executives or service leads, or when everybody can lead. You know, what does leading actually mean? It means trying to get the best out of the people around you. It means trying to make the right decisions. It means trying to drive yourself forward to be better. And everyone can do that. You know, everyone can do that. And actually, everybody needs to do that, particularly AHPs. When we think about our position in the kind of healthcare ecosystem, we're the third largest workforce when we're together, but doctors and nurses certainly dominate. So we need voices, particularly with the three shifts into the, you know, that we're trying to see, the three left shifts, the movement to the community, towards prevention, towards being more digitally minded. AHPs and physio can play a huge part in that. You know, our skills are in the community a lot of the time. You know, we make our living there a lot of the time already. So we need to lead that movement into the community, and that doesn't matter whether you're a service leader, director, or a clinician on the ground floor. Everybody has to do that.
No, absolutely, and it almost, I guess, links into what you're saying there of that passion of why you start the profession, why you want to get into the role. And as you say, when we make getting the best out of people around us, that includes the service users that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, but then that wider population, community, region. And you mentioned there particularly about AHPs having that louder voice. Do you think that it comes is it more of a confidence issue? As you say, nurses and doctors dominate quite heavily. AHPs, when we group together, we've got sort of voice in numbers, but there's almost that missing link, because history-wise, we've been around for a hell of a long time, haven't we? If you think there's history all the way back into ancient Greece of physiotherapy type roles. What, from your perspective of that bigger picture, what do you think is missing from us as a collective raising that voice?
I don't think it's one thing. I think there's a number of things. You know, doctors are well embedded in the psyche of the nation, and quite rightly so. You know, they're hugely an invaluable resource. Nurses, similarly so. So they're probably better known than AHPs in the public persona. They've also, and I know you've alluded to, we've been around for a long time, but physiotherapy officially as a profession has only been around for about 100 years versus medicine and nursing being around for a lot longer. So what that means is also from a data perspective and a research perspective is that we're not able to always demonstrate our value in the same way. And I don't mean value in a kind of values way that we were talking about leadership, but actual value. You know, how do we deliver return on investment for services, for ICBs, for care for patients? So I think we display good leadership a lot of the time. We could be better. I think we need to make sure that we have seats around important tables. And we need to keep pushing for that. Professional bodies and trade unions like the CSP are part of doing that, but so are people in their own services. You know, if changes are happening in their service, we need to make sure that AHPs are represented. Now, AHP leadership, chief AHP leadership has proliferated over the last few years, but with the cuts that are being made to ICBs recently and the merger of the Department of Health with the NHS England and NHS England being abolished, we are at risk of AHP leadership diminishing over the next few years. So we really have to fight within our services to make sure that AHPs remain represented. So that's a really, really important point over the next few years. We are at a bit of a turning point that we need to make sure we're ahead of. So I would say over the next few years, it's crucial that locally and service-wise, people are standing up and being heard. But also it is about data. You know, are we collecting the right data? How are we speaking to commissioners? Do we understand what they want for their services? Can we demonstrate that? That might be different from what we've collected traditionally. You know, we're quite good at collecting clinical outcomes, for example, but is that telling commissioners or decision makers what they want about their service? You know, can we demonstrate reduced stress on the service, reduce readmissions, reduce, you know, non-elective bed days? They're the things that commissioners care about. So we not only need to demonstrate clinical value, but also service value. And I think we're not consistent enough at doing that. We can definitely do more in that space. So it's not one thing for me, it's a number of things, but we're moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exactly what it's interesting you mentioned there about what do the commissioners want and what do we collect and how do we almost translate our data capture. As you say, a lot of it's very clinical outcome, service user centric, but commissioners in terms of funding pots, in terms of services, are just like, for example, what we were doing at Health Valued. We've had talks with integrated care boards, primary care networks, housing associations, and actually gaining that quantitative statistical data of how many people are not using NHS services and coming to a community service, weighed up with then how many beds does that save, how many admissions does that prevent, but then also the qualitative stories of those individuals where they might not have been to a GP for 10 years, and by having a community service, that's encouraged them to go back to sort of help with weight management, stopping smoking. And it's almost that, obviously the 4 pillars of practice, we've got clinical, leadership, education and research, and it's almost how do we dive into that research a bit more, but translate it to what people are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely, you're dead right.
And you mentioned and I know it was quite a hot topic of debate when you were at the physio conference, I think it was last year, was it, in Tokyo, about the need for more general practitioners, and you mentioned about the position of needing more AHP leaders and voices, but on more of a ground level, rather than having specialist type practitioners being more general. And that's had a lot of debate because obviously in the physio profession particularly, people will pick a specialty and run with it, and that's their skill set. How do you think the impact of us becoming more general, what will that have on not only the service users, but then the staff and us as physiotherapists as well?
I think it'll have a profound impact. You know, I think we need to think about who we're there to serve, and we're there to serve patients. And we have had a proliferation over the last 20, 30 years, probably longer than that. And it's not unique to physio, it's the same in other areas, but we have got lots of specialists in physiotherapy. And that's not to say we don't need specialists, we absolutely do, we always will. But what I talk about is the balance. What's the balance we have between generalists and specialists? And when you're a student learning physiotherapy, you learn across the broad body system. So you learn cardio, respiratory, you learn neurology, you learn MSK, you know, you do learn about all of the body systems. And then it feels like once we qualify, we immediately start to lose some of that potentially. And what I want to see us do over the next 10, 20 years is retain some of that generalist skill. Because that's what patients need. When we look at the patient population demographics, we have an aging population. So about 4% of the population at the moment are over 85. That's going to be 7% in 20 years. So we're going to see a doubling of the number of people over 85. What that comes with is a growing number of older individuals with multimorbidity. We're also seeing that growing. So the patient now that you see who is 65 with NEO-A will have NEO-A and cardiovascular disease potentially, and mental health problems. And how are we able to treat that person in a holistic way? Not to say we have to be experts in everything. We don't have to address all of those problems directly and treat them as a specialist would. But can we have a broad understanding of that individual that means we get them to the right place at the right time, and we don't ignore other parts of the body system or send them down another referral pathway when it could be dealt with in the moment there. So I would like to see us retaining those generalist skills more. And that will have a huge impact on the profession because I think it will allow us to be in more places. And if you couple that with the move to the community, you know, when you're out in the community, you do need those broader skill sets. So I think we will be more effective in that move to the community, and it'll be better for patients. You know, patients won't have to go down multiple referral pathways. They won't have to see 4 people when they can see 2 people. So I think it's really important that we do develop those skills and retain those skills over the next 10, 20 years.
No, absolutely. And it's almost because I think a lot of the debate has been, people almost took it as, we're not going to specialise in any profession and we're all just going to go down every path. But you're more saying of, it's just the baseline fundamental knowledge of actually, if someone comes in with NEOA and they've got a respiratory issue and a mental health issue, we can have that conversation of, how are you managing at home? What's your diet like? What's your current rehabilitation service? How is that going? And have a broader understanding of what that person is dealing with, to then tailor out, if it is an MSK, NEOA type scenario, tailor that treatment better to them.
Absolutely. I mean, when I always said when I worked in an MSK clinic, why wasn't I taking someone's blood pressure every time they came in? Why wasn't I doing that? Why don't people do that? It's because they think, it's not my job to do that. But that's actually a generally good indicator. And we have the skills to be able to do that. It's a pretty basic thing to do.
Yeah.
So why aren't we doing those checks in environments where it would be meaningful? Primary care, for example. I think we have the skills and the knowledge. We're trained in that way. We just need to retain it for as long as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that comes with, at university level, there being a slight change in the education, or do you think that's, I know we'll come on to shortly about current entry-level positions and the difficulty of the workforce. How do you think we could go about making those changes?
I think it's from both sides, as with anything. I think from an education perspective, I would like to see more integrated learning. I know it's happening in lots of places, so I'll be preaching to the converted of people listening to this, but the kind of teaching in the silos of neurology, MSK, cardiorespiratory, are not unhelpful, but I think we could do it in a more meaningful way for clinicians and learners that represents the complexity that they're going to see. So I would like to see integration of learning from a HEI perspective. Having said that, curriculums are packed, you can't do everything. So we can't just keep adding stuff in. So I think it's about doing things differently, not more. And then from a practice side, it's about approaching things differently. People generally have retained those skills early in their career because they go on rotation, and that's not always possible. We're looking at how we can diversify the entry-level roles that people go into. So it's about people in practice realising that they need to retain those skills, and as we're entering the workforce, we're continuing to develop those skills, even if you are in an MSK department or you're working in neurology. How are you able to maintain your MSK skills, or if you're in an MSK clinic, how do you keep your auscultation skills so that if someone does come in with NEOA and COPD, you're able to use those skills and marry them up? So I think it's both directions. It's about how we're educating, how we're entering the profession, and preceptorship is a good methodology for that. But then how we are, from a practice perspective, retaining as many skills as we can. So it is a real shift in culture, I think, in how we're approaching problems, and that takes time, but that's okay. That's okay. We just need to make small steps in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of having people on board it's good to have that internal debate and discussion about the path we're on, but understanding it's for the greater good of the profession, isn't it, as well as the service users, that we need to change things to keep ourselves more adaptable, because as you say, at university we learn a vast array of systems and knowledge base for all areas, and then even on rotation people can move between a different spot for 6 months, and after they've finished one spot they might have forgotten everything from beforehand, and it's a case of, do you think there's more of a standardised CPD approach, whether that would be from the CSP or broader afield, or do you think a lot of it is just as we would put individual accountability on service users, ourselves as practitioners, to go, actually, even though I'm in an MSK clinic, I could do with practicing auscultation or neuro and stuff like that?
Again, I think it's a bit of both. I think the CSP, through things like the conference, which you might mention later on, has the potential to offer some opportunities for learning. I think centralising a postgraduate curriculum, either by the CSP or by it is difficult. Physiotherapy is really broad, so you would probably end up creating something centrally that was so watered down that it might be probably unhelpful. I do think it's possible to create a curriculum within specific contexts. So when I worked at Connect, my role was to generate or create the National Academy, which looked after a number of different clinician or clinical groups, and create a curriculum that reflected the context that we were working in, that allowed people to develop in a really meaningful way. So I think you can do it when there's context. doing something nationally is probably difficult, or you could do it, but it probably wouldn't be the most helpful thing. So I think we need to be really selective about what we're doing national things on. So the CSP have just developed and released health informatics modules, for example, how to upskill AHP clinicians in developing their data skills. That is quite a good thing to do centrally, because people are often at a similar starting point, and it's an area that we need to develop together in. So we've been able to do it there. I don't think it would work for something that was more clinically focused in the way that we're talking here. So I think it's about context.
Yeah, absolutely, and picking the areas within where we work as individuals and what would be most important for us, and then finding those avenues. Absolutely. And I know you're a big advocate on AI, and obviously recently you've been on BBC talking about AI and exercise, and there's almost two halves. There's people that are really keen to engage AI. So for example, in our clinic work, we use AI note-taking and a booking system, and it saves our admin time loads, and it's fantastic. We can sit and have a face-to-face appointment. The AI is recording all the information, boxes it up into what we need. We obviously can check through it, make sure it's all accurate and what have you, save it, do the exercises. Whereas more traditional routes, they're just slowly coming into AI, and obviously there's a lot more red tape and different things NHS-wise. How do you see, and then there's other people that are really fearful of it whatsoever, the next 10 years, how do you see AI and physiotherapy? Where do you see it taking us?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a number of places it's being used in healthcare at the moment. Documentation is one of those things in admin, imaging, wearables, technology, robotics. There's so many large language models helping people think in a different way. There's so many different potential uses of AI that I think we will see the adoption of it over the next 10 years. I mean, we're already seeing it now. So it's kind of here and it's happening. But I totally understand people's different starting points with it. It's as with any change, and even if you take it outside of technology, you'll have your early adopters of change, people who are keen for it, they want to be the ones that are trying the new thing. You'll get your larger middle group of people who, once they've seen the early adopters do it and they realise it's safe, they'll give it a go. And then you've got your anchors at the end of people who are really reluctant and want to see it really work well, or are a bit fearful of change, and it takes them a bit longer. I don't think we'll see a difference in that with AI. I think we'll still see those broad groups of people, and we are seeing early adopters try things. That's why we developed the AI principles, because we could see these early adopters happening, and we wanted to give people a framework.
Absolutely.
With AI, the governance around it is almost slower than the development of the technology, so we don't have national legislation on AI yet in a way that we would like. It's in development. We don't have national governance of AI in the way that we might have for other things. So we felt like it was really useful for us to put together some principles to say, if you're going to use AI, this is a safe and ethical way to do it. We've obviously revised that already and reviewed it at 6 months, and we'll continue to do that. But it's really important, I think, to understand that it's going to happen over the next 10 years is my belief, and it will emerge in workplaces. And to my point about being around the table, I want physios and AHPs to be really engaged in the topic, because and one of my favourite sayings that I heard recently is, if we're not around the table, we'll be on the menu. And I think it's really important that we are around the table having really meaningful discussions about the adoption of AI. Because we have to realise the benefits that it can bring. So what do I mean by that? You've just described your documentation and how that it's helping you with efficiency. My worry is, particularly when commissioning is so tight and money is tight in services, is that if at the moment you see 10 patients a day, you bring in some AI to make your life more effective and more efficient, what I would hope would happen, and what needs to happen, is that time is then passed on to those 10 patients. So instead of getting 20 minutes with those 10 patients, you get half an hour, 45 minutes. You get longer with the patients, more interaction, better treatments, higher quality. Rather than you bring in AI and then those 10 patients turn into 15 patients and they all get the same amount of time, the quality stays the same. So the benefits of AI have to be passed on to the clinicians. So I'm really keen that we understand what they can be. We also need physios in the development of AI, so that AI systems that are being developed are clinically informed. There's a human in the loop, and we understand how things are being developed and delivered. Otherwise, we will miss out, and it won't do things in the way that, it'll be people who are developing technology that are dictating patient care, not clinicians dictating care. So we have to be as part of that. And I think over the next 10 years, we'll see roles emerging for clinicians to be part of the development of those things. And we should be. So I think we'll see the adoption of it in lots of different areas, not just documentation. I think we need to be at the table. I think we need to be in discussions about the development of it.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be in discussions about the governance of it and how we're ethically delivering it. So it's here, it's happening. We need to be a part of it. We can't be dismissive of it because it's happening. There's a risk that we go, it's happening, so let's just go with it. It's going to be here, so let's just take it. If we just take the adoption of it, it will displace us in a way that is unhelpful rather than a way that is helpful. I think it will replace tasks that we do, but it won't replace the purpose of what physiotherapy is for, and that's what we need to really hold on to. So it's okay for it to take over some tasks, admin-wise, maybe rehab prescription, maybe other things, parts of assessment, maybe parts of subjective history taking, wearables, data capture. It's okay for it to take tasks from us, but it won't take the purpose of physiotherapy. And I don't think it will.
Yeah, in terms of that, and that almost coming on to the next question about, and it's something that the students with us, Angus and Hira, mentioned about, how do we keep that human side of physiotherapy alive? And I think the point you may have mentioned there particularly of, it will take the tasks, but the purpose. Do you worry that often with robotics and AI, there's this fear of, it will come and take our jobs type thing? Do you worry that physiotherapy will head down that route? I know there's been trials down south where they've just used AI animated videos to help clear waiting lists, and it's gone quite well. But do you still see that human side and the purpose, as you mentioned there?
Yeah, there's a few things. So I think, one, AI is not at a place yet where it's physically assessing people. So there will be a certain cohort of patients that always need a human. But because AI is an interactive thing, it's digital. It can't interact with you as a human at the moment, so it can't do a Lackman's. It's not going to do an apprehension test on your shoulder. It's not going to help mobilise you from a bed to a chair. It's not going to do those things. So there will always be a need for humans there. There will always be a need for human interaction from a very practical point of view. I think it will take some parts of our job, as I've said, but I don't think it will take our job. And that's okay, as long as the benefits of it taking parts of our job are passed on so that care can be of higher quality and more consistent for people. So I think it can be a real force for good if we adopt it in the right way. The other thing is as well, I think, just as humans, we like interacting with humans. It wasn't that long ago that the first computer beat someone in chess, for example. No one's lining up to watch a computer chess game. No one's lining up for that, because we just think, well, we like a bit of imperfection, we like a bit of human interaction. No, people aren't just going to want to talk to a machine all the time. I think it helps and will help a certain cohort of people, and it can help lots of us, but there'll always be, I think, the understanding from humans that it's not real. And we crave that. We crave human interaction. So I don't think we will lose it for practical reasons. I don't think we'll lose it for philosophical reasons. Physiotherapy will need to adapt as a profession, but that's what we're built on. We've adapted throughout our history into loads of different areas, and this is no different for me. So I'm not overly concerned. I think it will take parts of our role, but I think we will adapt really well. It will create new roles for us, new spaces for us to move into. And I think it will only enhance what we do if we adopt it in the right way. There is a chance that it will bulldoze us. So the call to action here is for everybody to be in meaningful conversations, whether that's in your private practice, in your trust, in your education, in your higher education institution, in your third sector environment. Be in conversations about AI, be in conversations about how it's been developed, how it's been adopted, where it's been tested, where the data is from, where it's being kept. Be in those conversations. And I'm confident that we will be. So with us in those conversations, I think we'll adopt it in a safe and ethical way. And I think it can be a real good thing for physiotherapy.
No, absolutely. And I think the point you made there, and the key aspect of that, of rather than we adopt it and those 10 patients becomes 15, but we give the time back to the clinicians and the service users. So similar with the service we provide, we have typical 45-minute, half an hour appointments, but the AI allows us to have that more human interaction, and we can go through exercises in more detail. We haven't necessarily got to worry about rushing and trying to get people out the door. And the service users often appreciate that, because there's that sort of mantra of, oh, you know, the physio gave me exercise and threw me out. And we want to, the common connection, particularly in outpatients, MSK-wise at least, is that rapport and the trust with the clinician is often far greater than the exercises handed to them on a piece of paper.
The irony is, isn't it, that the AI can make an interaction more human.
Yeah.
Because you have more time to actually physically speak to the patient, to create that therapeutic alliance with someone, to create those bonds. So, yeah, there is an irony there that if done right, AI can actually make interactions more human, not less.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully the take-home message from everything you've said there, and just as you think and discussed about commissioners, and although efficiency is good, but our profession is a human-to-human profession, and using the AI to support us and what we do, absolutely, I think is a key.
And this is why we have to map on, and this is going back to the commissioner conversation, we have to map on not just outcome measures, but experience measures.
Yeah.
You know, we have to understand how a patient or a group are experiencing the service, not just what their outcomes are.
Yeah.
So it might be that people's outcomes improve and their OA gets better, as a basic example, but the service was terrible. Their experience of the service is terrible. They're never going to come back, or you know, they're not going to use physiotherapy again, or they're going to go somewhere else. So, well, we have to understand their experience as much as their outcomes.
No, absolutely, and I think that leads us nicely on, because you have obviously a big say in AI and pushing that forward from the CSE perspective. In terms of the work that you're doing in your current role at the CSP, what impact do you hope that it has not only on the CSP itself but the wider profession?
Well, I hope the membership see that we're trying to be out in front of it. You know, I hope the membership see that we're working hard not to be left behind by this, and be a profession that is in 10 years going, oh, I wish we'd spend more time on that. So we really are trying to be at the forefront of this. So, and that's being noticed. So in a couple of weeks' time, I'm flying out to LA to spend time with the American Physio Association, who are developing their AI principles. And because we're almost the first physio organisation to do it in the world, you know, they want our input on how to develop their principles. So it is being noticed how much work that the CSP are doing on this, not just in the UK, but globally. In the UK, radiologists have done some great work on AI as well. So it's obviously invading their space as well as ours from a service perspective. So they've done some great work too. But other than that, we are leading in the UK from an AHP perspective. So I hope members see that we're doing lots. I hope that we're able to facilitate the widening of the understanding of AI. I hope we bring it into people's sphere of influence sooner than it might have been if we hadn't been here. So I hope they're aware of it and they understand it more because of the work that the CSP has done. And I hope we're able to influence decision makers, policy makers from the other direction. So not just members. You know, we're in conversations with policymakers from government all the time, NHS England, the devolved nation NHS bodies. You know, we talk broadly to lots of third-party stakeholders in the UK. So hopefully we can use our influence as a professional body and a trade union to make sure that decisions are made in the right way, not just within services because of members, but more broadly in other areas as well. We'll continue to review the principles, so we've committed to reviewing them every 6 months for the first 2 years. They'll be reviewed again. Some of the work that I want to do this year is looking at things that we haven't done so far, like research priorities. So I think we should be informing the members and our research colleagues about what the gaps are. So where can we really improve our understanding of AI in the UK in particular? So we'll look at research priorities this year. We'll also, I think, look at international comparisons and adoption. So again, my work going over to America, I think that's really important. We, like I said, again, we'll review the principles and they'll constantly be under review. And we pull in experts from outside the CSP, expert members, expert educators, to help inform how we develop them next. So it will be a continued part of the conversation.
Good, and I think that's refreshing from not only a member's perspective but a wider physiotherapy perspective, as that things have been taken seriously and that there are things in place to make sure that the transition is as smooth as it can be. Obviously there'll be ups and downs. From a more wider CSP perspective, 2026, obviously a new year, the CSP's got a hell of a lot of members, but there's also a growing number of physiotherapists that are almost staying away because they argue that they don't really see the value of where their membership's going. What can people either in the CSP or people who are thinking about coming back or joining, what can we sort of look forward to in terms of 2026, what the CSP can offer?
Yeah, and that, like you say, that's a difficult thing to communicate all the time because, and I know it might not feel it from a member perspective, but the CSP does so much work that if we communicated everything, we would over-communicate. And people would be like, please don't send me anything else. So we do have to be quite selective about what we communicate when we communicate it, because there is so much. But from my perspective, so we're still in the middle of our latest strategy. So we're in year 4 of a 5-year strategy. The responsibility in my area is improving the access and quality of physiotherapy for communities. So that's aim A within our strategy. And if people want to see the full strategy, it's on the website.
Brilliant.
But within aim A, what am I doing in my area? So there's continued work on AI, which we've just talked about, so I won't touch on that again. But it's broadly about how physiotherapy can contribute to patients accessing high quality care. So part of that is the physiotherapy workforce.
Yeah.
So my responsibility is understanding our pipeline, trying to understand how they're transitioning into work. And obviously a bit of work that we're doing at the moment is really trying to unblock these recruitment freezes for new graduates. So we're liaising lots with government. We've got our first APPG, which is an all-parliamentary group meeting that we are convening and we're leading for AHPs. And the first topic of that is workforce.
Nice.
So that's happening on the 2nd of March.
Brilliant.
So I'll be there talking in government to politicians and other people about the physiotherapy workforce and the need and value of it.
Yeah.
We've obviously done the Physiotherapy Graduate Hub, which provides resources for graduating members on how they can prepare themselves in the best way to get a role. So we're doing lots of work on the physiotherapy workforce. That also includes the development of the workforce from an equity and diversity perspective. So we need to make sure that the physiotherapy population that are graduating are representative of the populations they serve. You know, we want to see physios from all backgrounds, all cultures, all races becoming physiotherapists, because that's what our population looks like, and we need to be able to represent our population. So there's lots of work going on from a workforce perspective. We're doing lots of work on understanding how the transition to neighbourhood health teams is working. So we're going to map nationally what that looks like, where services are up to in relation to the 3 shifts. So we're going to work in what we call localism. So we have the regions of the UK split up. And within those localism areas, we'll be doing lots of mapping work to understand where we're up to and communicating that out to members. We've just completed research last year on what we call the transforming quality in education for physiotherapy. And we're going to embed those findings this year. So working with HEIs, looking to the future of the curriculum, what does the curriculum need to look like, what should it look like? And we accredit, we're in a unique position really in that we accredit all university programs that deliver physiotherapy in the UK. So we work with all HEIs on accrediting their programs, and we're going to use that research to try and help upskill's the wrong word because HEIs are fantastic, but modernise the programs and get them delivering what we think are the best things for physiotherapy. So things that have come out of that research are things like community care. So embedding that more, digital AI also included. So we're going to try and upskill and develop the HEIs to develop some of those things. More widely in the UK, more widely in the CSP, we have our ongoing work around campaigning for pay, for example. We've got a Stop Sexual Harassment campaign.
Recently.
We have our national conference, which is in Glasgow later this year. Abstracts are open for that. We have our annual representatives conference in Manchester, where members are able to submit motions to help direct the work of the CSP. We have lots of engagement with students, so we're going to continue with our student visits. We go out and visit first year, last year students to really try and help them understand what the benefit of the CSP is. We'll continue to negotiate around our PLI, public liability insurance. That's under my remit. So as the CSP, we hold the public liability insurance for all physios that are members, and we work with our provider to try and really develop that policy so it captures as much as we possibly can and does the best for members. So that's a really big member benefit. We've got work around the CSP library that we're doing this year. So we're bringing in an AI fellow, which was approved last year. Their job is going to be to create living evidence reviews, so that if a member wants to be able to come to the CSP library and just say, give me all the evidence on community care and physiotherapy, there'll be a review ready to go, and they'll automatically update via AI every year, and we'll have them on a number of topics. So we're bringing that in this year, and that's going to be in development. So there's loads going on, and hopefully loads that members can see that, one, we're trying to deliver them. And last year was a big year for delivery. We brought things out like the career framework. We delivered on the research around education. So there's lots we brought out last year in terms of delivery. This year is about embedding lots of that. It's about speaking to decision makers and policy makers to try and unblock things that are difficult for our members. But it's also about continuing to delivering things that they find useful on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully we try and find the balance of that in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from obviously a member myself, but just that ward as a physiotherapy profession, obviously the students in the room as well with us, that there's not only opportunities that you guys are pushing for on a statutory, larger national sense, but there's also, as an individual, as a group, as a community, as a department, there's ways that we can get involved as physiotherapists. But then there's also bigger things that are being fought for us as well. And I think that comes nicely on to, with the students we have in the room who are coming towards the end of their studies and the current job market. I heard on a previous interview you did with our mutual friend Priya, leadership physio that we met at the CSP networking event, about when you graduated, there was a similar time in the late noughties, late crossover of the noughties 2009-10 region of a lack of jobs and having to go further afield. In terms of the current graduate situation, I know you touched on there's a lot of things the CSP are doing in terms of making people aware of the value of joining the membership, but then also the different avenues of the profession that people can go down, whether it's private practice or research or whatever it may be. What are your thoughts on the current situation, and what tips would you try and give students that are about to graduate or people that have graduated over the last year who still haven't got a job to go forward with their skills?
Yeah, it's not an easy situation. Like you say, it comes in cycles, so that this does happen. This is not the first time it's happened. So when I graduated in 2007, there was a similar situation where there were reduced amount of jobs for physiotherapists. That's why I went initially into the private sector, which is fine. What I would say is, look at the stuff the CSP is putting out. You know, that there is a graduate hub there to help develop skills around interviews, etc. You know, how to apply for a job. There's lots of useful things on there that can help you when you do apply for a job, when one does come up. Rest assured, we are working as hard as we can to try and influence government to unblock those jobs. The point that's worth making is, it's not like anyone's picking on physio. It's not just a physio problem. It is a problem more broad than that, with other professions as well. So it's hard to think that, you know, it's just physiotherapy that it's an issue in. I know it's no solace really, but it's not like people are picking on physio. So physio is in a strong position, and if you're graduating as a physiotherapist, you've put yourself in a stronger position than maybe some others, because physiotherapy is such a broad church. You can go into the private sector, you can go into the third sector, you can go into sport, occupational health, research. There's lots of different places that you can put yourself as a physiotherapist. So whilst the jobs are restricted, we need to be clear that we're talking about the NHS and direct NHS employment. There's also some great independent organisations that provide NHS care that are still recruiting really well. So there are jobs out there. They might not be in the place that you want them. So my advice would be patient, as uncomfortable as it feels. Keep developing your skills, don't lose them. Stay in physiotherapy. Please don't feel like it's a profession that you need to leave. It will give you a fantastic career. Just stick with it and look, and maybe be a bit flexible. Try and look outside of where you would traditionally have thought, because you can develop skills everywhere you go that will be beneficial for the future. So it's not easy. There will be opportunities. Stick with it, and just make sure you're ready when the time comes to apply for a job. So look at all of those resources.
Absolutely, and I think that's testament of someone who's been through it beforehand, sort of 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it almost seems that there's these transition cycles in history of our profession where when there's big change, when we're becoming more acute, when we're broadening more to community that we're doing at the moment, there almost has to be a bit of a retrace before there'll be a lot more, if we think of the 10-year plan opening up into the community.
You're so right. And when you look at the 3 shifts, there's a huge need for physiotherapists.
Yeah.
As I've talked about already, the shift to community, the shift towards prevention, we have so many of those skills. So the jobs will be there.
Yeah.
This is a point in time. Physiotherapists have fundamental skills that this nation needs. And we don't have enough physios. As odd as that sounds, it feels like at the moment really difficult because every job that there's lots of physios going for it, that's a job issue. It's not a physiotherapy issue.
Yeah.
If we look at our international comparisons, in the UK there's around 9, maybe 10 physios per 10,000 of the population. In Australia there's 14, 15 per 10,000 population. In Denmark there's about 24 physios per 10,000 of the population. So we're actually quite low in terms of international comparisons. The number of physios we have per members of our population is quite low. So we actually need more physios, which seems counterintuitive, but it's what we are really fighting for at the CSP is not because of this point in time that the knee-jerk reaction thing to do is to restrict the pipeline.
Yeah.
And we are absolutely not saying that. We don't think there are enough physios. So we're not saying restrict the pipeline. We're saying physiotherapy can continue to grow because we need physiotherapists to deal with all of the things we've talked about, care in the community, comorbidity, multimorbidity. All of those things need physiotherapy. We just need to bide our time, which is uncomfortable. I know it is, and it's not really any consolation for the students watching this, looking at me thinking it's all right for you. But it will turn around. I know it will.
And I think reiterating that message, as you say there, that patience and that something will have to change, won't it? And there's a broad field of jobs that are outside the NHS that people can potentially look into at the moment. But from an NHS public health perspective, the tide is turning and being prepared, ready to sort of ride that wave. And just from your own sort of career, and it's fascinating to see your journey sort of all the different roles you've had and sort of up and down the country and then some associate lecturing positions, management positions, now a director at the CSP. If you were to take yourself back to the start of your career, because I know you don't really talk about yourself much, you talk a lot more like bigger physio-wise, and it's just interesting just as something to learn from of how much you've achieved. What advice would you sort of give back to your younger self in terms of the path you've gone on? Because I imagine it's not been linear, just like most things in life, there's been ups and downs.
Yeah, there's certainly been ups and downs, as with everybody. I think some of the things that I would say to myself that I have done are say yes to stuff, take opportunities. I think there's so many things I could have said no to, but I probably wouldn't have been where I am if I had of. So say yes to opportunities. I think the other thing for me is everyone you meet knows something you don't. So there's always an opportunity to learn. Whatever situation you find yourself in, wherever you think you are in a hierarchy, whoever you're working with, they know something that you don't know, and you have something to learn from that individual. So I would say squeeze the life out of every opportunity you have to learn, because you will find that useful further down the line. So I think say yes, learn in every opportunity and possible way that you can. And if I was to change anything, I'd probably say be a bit more patient. It's not a race. You don't have to achieve everything in your first 2 years of qualifying, or you don't have to push for the next thing all the time. Sometimes just being in place, learning as much as you can is enough. So I would say probably be a bit more patient. You don't have to rush. They're probably my top 3.
No, thank you for that. And I think it's interesting. And I know we've had conversations and I think the students have got some questions in a second of almost looking at when you're at the start of your career, when you're a student and seeing people like yourself in those positions, you think, how on earth do you get from where we are to there? But it's actually those saying yes to those opportunities and that patience and that over time, things will come up, won't they?
Absolutely.
And if it's okay with yourself, and we've got two of our fantastic placement students, Angus and Hera, with us. You guys got any questions at all to throw to Ash?
I do have a few.
Okay.
I'm a very student-based one. I'm not too knowledgeable about NHS England and what happened with that, and just do you mind explaining firstly what it was and what it now means that it doesn't exist pre-depth?
Yeah. So there's two at the moment, and historically, and I think it was the last Labour government that brought it in the 90s, where there was the Department for Health that manages the health budget of the UK and the care of the delivery. They felt it needed a delivery arm. So they created NHS England to be the body that oversaw the delivery of the NHS care in England. Now, the justification, or what they found, or what Wes Streeting has found when he's come into power with this Labour government, is that there's probably a bit of duplication, or he feels there's a bit of duplication. It increases bureaucracy. There's more red tape than there needs to be, because there's the Department of Health and NHS England. So what they're doing is they're absorbing people from NHS England where they need it into the Department for Health, and then they're abolishing NHS England. So they're just going to have one department, which in theory and by justification will have less bureaucracy, less red tape, and maybe be able to move more efficiently and effectively, but the proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you felt it was that way, but
Yeah.
You mentioned sort of physios across Australia, Denmark, other places. A lot of my friends and a lot of students I meet usually talk about jumping ship and going to Australia and working there because of, well, stories of higher quality of life, better pay, better patient time, stuff like that. Do you feel that is an issue or something that is actually happening, or do you just think it's anecdotal? People are just saying it?
I think people have always done that. I think as far as I can remember, there will always be a certain amount of people, particularly younger people, newly qualified younger people, who think living abroad and working abroad is something that's great. And I think it is great. I think it is a good thing to do and can be a great thing to do. I wouldn't want everyone to do it. But I don't think it's not an issue that's raising alarm bells for me. I think people have always done that, and people will always do that. When we look at the HCPC numbers, so when I look at the numbers that come from our regulator, the HCPC, the number of physios that leave to go abroad and work is fairly consistent. I haven't seen that go up or down significantly. We've seen a significant influx of internationally trained physios into the HCPC register and into the UK, but not vice versa. Those numbers have been pretty consistent in terms of physios going out.
And on that topic of international students studying here, I know quite a few, especially in Worcester. We seem to have a lot of Canadians.
Yeah.
And they'll come over, get a degree here because it's not a master's, it's a bachelor's, and they'll go back over to Canada, sit their exam, and then you've kind of lost an asset, I feel like, by training them here and then they're leaving again. Do you think that number's been consistent as well, or do you think it's gone up?
I think that number has probably gone up slightly. We don't actually have concrete data on that, but it is something we're discussing at the CSP. I spoke to my Canadian counterpart not long ago about this issue, and actually their view was that they're not coming back, that they're training and staying.
Falling in love with England.
So they do, if only they'd come to Wales. I think it's a blurred picture. I think a lot of that is anecdote to a certain degree, but what we have seen, and this is a technical point as well, is we used to have an NHS bursary to train for physiotherapy. So when I trained, the NHS paid me a bursary to train, so I didn't have any tuition fees. They paid my tuition fees. I can't remember exactly what year, but they removed that bursary. I think in 2017, maybe, something like that. They removed the bursary, and that's when tuition fees went up. And we did worry at the time, and there was a conversation at the time that would reduce the number of people entering the physiotherapy profession. It's actually proliferated, and many more. It's gone up by 74%.
Wow.
More people join the physiotherapy profession, and this is because universities can basically, their businesses. Physiotherapy is a popular course, so there are around 4,000 or 5,000 physiotherapy places every year in the UK. There's 20,000 applicants, so we could fill physiotherapy a couple of times over in terms of pipeline. So it's a popular course of universities. They know if they put the course on, people will join. So we do see people coming from overseas, and obviously they pay a bit more coming from overseas, so it makes money for the university. So it's a business decision as much as anything else from individual HEIs, which they're perfectly entitled to do. But it is a conversation we're having at within the CSP, more to understand the workforce we actually have in the UK. Because we have the numbers on students, but like I say, some of them are international, some stay and some go. We don't actually know how many stay. We have an influx of internationally trained physios joining the HCPC register, but we don't know how many stay and how many are abroad still. So it's more about how do we really understand the number of physios that we have in the UK that are able to work as physios in the UK. So it's more around data, understanding the data. It doesn't overly concern me because I think some do stay. But I think some do go, and I'm not sure that will always be the case.
I mean, by the sounds of it, it's also good for us to have some international students so that those universities can make a bit more money and maybe keep funding the course and stuff as well.
Well, I think for a number of reasons. I think it's fantastic to have international students because they bring a different culture, perspective, learning, knowledge. It's great to have internationally trained physios because they bring different experiences, understanding, knowledge. So I think I never view those international joiners as a bad thing. We want to be able to grow our domestic pipeline so that it's more sustainable because we have less control over internationally trained clinicians coming in and out, and it's less stable. So, for example, if we look at the HCPC figures, we know that if you are hypothetically an under 30 female from Australia, you're likely to stay on the HCPC register for 2 years and then leave again. If you are an over 30s male from India, you're more than likely to stay on the HCPC register for over 5 years. So we do keep an eye on where people are coming in from internationally because it means we can track how long they're likely to be within the workforce within the UK. So there are things like that we're checking and tracking, but it all for me enriches physiotherapy in the UK and makes us better clinicians and better services.
Yeah, okay, thank you for explaining that to me. Yeah. Just go back to something you mentioned about, this was a while back, but the generalized skill set and how, on placements or as students, we need to more retain the generalized skill set. Why do you think physio specifically should be this generalized role versus maybe other examples in healthcare or other allied health professionals? Why do you think physios are best suited for it?
I'm not sure it's the best suited. Okay. Well, I think we are. I think we are suited to it. That's not to say other AHPs aren't, because other AHPs will train in broad body systems too. But physiotherapists tend to look at the whole body, whereas a speech and language therapist is very focused on that area. But I don't see a reason why OT wouldn't do something similar in their context as well. I think we are trained in all body systems. And I just think we need to retain that skill for as long as we can because it makes us better clinicians, makes us better able to deal with patients in a really meaningful way. So we are best placed to do it, but we're not the only ones placed to do it. But I think the more generalists we have on balance versus specialists, the better.
With that view, is it safe to assume that you think rotational jobs should be more of a focus to be rotational to get a taste of everything?
I think rotations are great. They do give you that really broad skill set. I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite. I would rather us shift in practice to be better at retaining those skills, whatever the sector we're in. So whether you're in private practice, independent sector working in the NHS, whether you're in MSK, in neurology, I think it's about how you teach and how you develop your CPD rather than the prerequisite needing to be rotations. So I think rotations are great. I think they're really good. And they give you a really good grounding, but I don't think that's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, now that you say it, actually makes more sense to do that. Yeah. Well, those are the questions I wrote up.
Great.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Any others?
I have a similar question and you already answered it. So I just have one question. So this might be a common question that many people have asked before, but I would like to know what keeps you motivated, in your whole career after hearing the whole conversation. What keeps you motivated? I think you struggle from your clinic and then the leadership now, now. So what keeps you motivated? You see a lot.
I think that's a great question. I think that's a really, really good question. So to go back to what I said in the beginning, you get into healthcare because you care about people, you care about patients. I'm actually really passionate about health inequality. I think that the fact that the UK has the NHS, I absolutely love. It was a Welshman that founded it, for everybody, everybody that wants to know, Anya and Bevan, so I'm very happy about that. But I'm really passionate about people being able to receive high quality care, and I'm passionate about physiotherapy's role in that. So whether I'm contributing to that directly as a clinician, being on the ground, delivering patient services for people who need it, or whether I am in the position I am now trying to influence high quality care in the UK, that's what drives me. It's being able to get the right care to the right people at the right time. And I'm really passionate that physiotherapy has the skill set to be able to do that and contribute to the healthcare ecosystem in a really, really meaningful way. And I do feel deeply in this role in particular, my kind of guardianship and legacy for the profession. You know, it's my job to make sure that I leave the profession in a better way than I found it, I think, in this role. And I really do feel the pressure of that a little bit, but also the responsibility and, you know, the joy that can bring as well, though. You know, it's a real opportunity for me to be able to do this job. It's an absolute pleasure. And I just really want to make sure that physiotherapy continues to develop in the right way, that it moves with the times, moves with technology, but doesn't forget its roots and where it's come from and how it developed in the first place.
That's it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ash, for your time and all your questions today. And
Absolute pleasure.
for having us here. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much, Ash. Brilliant.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Good.
Good job, guys. No, cool. Thank you.